Stardust, Chapter 22, The Deal. Breaking news. National Guard and police forces reported patrolling cities in North Dakota while setting roadblocks to prevent travel out of urban centers. Attempts to question soldiers regarding the nature of their orders results in immediate arrest and detainment by all who approach. Breaking news. Observers outside airports report drastically reduced numbers of Air Guard aircraft returning to base. Aircraft spotted are reporting to show signs of damage and recent conflict. Federal and state authorities for the Guard units in question refused comment. 1:10 p.m. May 2nd, 2015. Stardust Labs. Twilight sat on her bed with her eyes closed as she maintained her concentration on the Wallflower spell. Since her first attempt at using the spell, she had become much more familiar with the amount of energy needed to maintain the effect, and she was able to further refine it after the testing that was done on it. All these improvements means less concentration was needed to maintain the effect, which meant that she could let her mind wander if she wanted to, or not.
Why would Matt lie like that? Why would he say...
Twilight caught herself as she realized Matt had never actually said anything about his part in her capture. It wasn't so much as a direct lie as a lie of omission.
Why wouldn't he say anything about that day? Is he hiding it because he feels guilty, or is it some other reason?
For the third time since the revelation became known to her, Twilight reviewed everything that has happened, ever since she arrived. There had been questions, so many questions about herself, her people, her world, and her abilities, and now that she had time to consider, she realized that her own questions in response were kinda steered towards personal anecdotes, or non-answers that didn't really tell her what she wanted to know.
Charles said that I was a guest and that I could help answer questions, but the more I think about it, the more it seems like I'm doing all the talking. Why are some things blocked on the internet that they let me use, and why won't they let me leave more often? Just why?
Twilight's mind continued to ask question after question to try and make sense of the situation she now found herself in.
Did Matt not tell the truth because he thought that would ruin his chances with me?
That last thought started to snowball in Twilight's mind, even as she considered it.
Wait. Lana said that Matt felt that way, but what if he felt that way for the first time he saw me? Then he took me here to...
Ponyville's library held a variety of books in both fiction and non-fiction, and Twilight was always proud of the fact that she had read almost every single one from cover to cover. Not only could she locate almost every book by memory, but she could also give a synopsis and recommendation for them as well. The few exceptions to her comprehensive knowledge were a series of books that her mother donated when Twilight had been installed as the librarian there. Twilight hadn't really understood the note that was included with the books.
I know you go to books for help, dear, so I hope that these will help you find someone nice to bring home every once in a while. Just remember, it's much more fun with a partner.
Until she had started reading them. To say that some of the situations that the mares and stallions found themselves in over the course of books weren't really suitable for polite conversation, or general consumption at a public library, that was an understatement. Twilight's embarrassment about the content of the books had morphed into horror when she realized that the pen name of the author was the same one her mother wrote with. She promptly boxed up every last one and hid them away where no pony would ever find them, while she did her best to try and scrub the contents of the one book she read from her mind. Unfortunately for Twilight, the contents of the book were coming back to her now.
A dungeon, a prisoner, and a sympathetic guard? Is this how human relationships normally work? Oh no. No.
The door to her living quarters opened, and Twilight recoiled in horror at the sound instinctually. Rather than something from her horror-fueled imagination, what the door revealed was Dr. Valen. She looked marginally more refreshed since the last time Twilight saw her, as well as wearing her usual suit and lab coat, and her tablet was tucked under one arm.
Good afternoon, Twilight. I have some good news from... Twilight? What's wrong? Oh, nothing. Nothing's wrong. What's the good news?
Twilight said quickly while she plastered a hasty smile on her face.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it.
If Valen noticed Twilight's anxiety, she didn't address it as she answered.
So, Matt and Lana's operation is complete, so you can seize the ability of Cast Upon them. And I was hoping you might be able to assist me with reviewing some material from another project. Our recent tests have made me review previous information, and I was kinda hoping your expertise on certain subjects might provide new insight. Oh, sure, I'd be happy to help.
Twilight answered immediately, and she hopped off the bed. Her next question came after a few moments of hesitation.
Are Matt and Lana alright? And Mr. Zhang too?
Valen's gaze fell down into the side.
Well, I'm afraid I don't know. I'm sure the moment that they get back, they'll come to visit and let you know themselves.
She stepped into the room and took a seat at the table before placing her tablet on the table.
So, if you would please have a seat, we can get started. So, these pictures are magnified to a significant degree, and they show what appears to be circuitry made out of Illyrium. Traditional circuitry uses electricity that flows down certain paths to create specific results, but we have thus far been unable to find the purpose behind this circuitry, since Illyrium, well, it can't really conduct electricity as well as more common elements.
Twilight hopped up into the chair and looked down at the picture displayed on the tablet. It was grainy and in black and white, but she was able to make out the lines of circuitry. The picture began to scroll to reveal more, and Twilight gasped.
This is amazing! Okay, so it looks like the spell matrix needs to gather energy from the field. Most unicorns do this instinctually, but Starswirl the Bearded was able to codify virtually every spell during his time in document spell matrices, kinda like this one. So, the circuitry is used to artificially reproduce the effects of your spells?
Valen quickly asked, and Twilight might have been a little concerned about the hunger in the scientist's eyes if she wasn't so surprised by the picture in front of her.
Well, I don't really know. Most basic magic can be done instinctively with enough practice, and more difficult spells often require an aria or incantation for a unicorn to use. Only the highest level magic practitioners use the actual matrix of a spell to get the desired effects. Spell matrices allow for much greater fine control and precision than an aria, but it's often too complex for the average unicorn to use. This right here, it's the first step in the spell casting process where the energy is gathered to be used.
Twilight looked down at the picture again before looking back to Valen.
So, where did you even find this? It's simply amazing that someone was actually able to make something, like this.
Valen's eagerness halted as she looked away. Twilight could see her swallow before clearing her throat.
So, this sample of circuitry was retrieved from an implant found inside the bodies of the invaders that attacked us several months ago.
Valen said slowly as she tapped the tablet. The picture shifted to what appeared to be an X-ray image of the head of a creature Twilight had never really seen before, and 3 white dots in close proximity were highlighted and labeled. Before she could dwell on that particular bit of knowledge, Valen tapped on one of the dots on the image and another image appeared.
So, can you tell me what this one does? Well, it looks like a receiver of some sort. It doesn't really specify the place of origin for whatever it's receiving, but it does seem like it would be getting something. Possibly maybe a signal, or a message, or even the effects of another spell? I'm sorry, I just... This one is entirely unfamiliar to me.
Ah, okay, I see. Valen's enthusiasm dropped just a shade, but didn't stop her from switching to the next picture with an almost indecent haste.
So, this one? This is...
Twilight started to say, but her eyes widened with horror as the image scrolled to show the complete circuit.
This is an abomination. The Matrix is specifically designed for attacking the mind of a target by supplementing its free will. This is just abuse of magic that would warrant banishment and exile were it even attempted back home.
Her horror morphed into disgust and outrage.
This abuse of power, it shouldn't even be tolerated.
Ah, okay. I see, Valen said. She paused to collect her thoughts before addressing Twilight again.
I know this may come as a shock to you, Twilight, to see something that you clearly hold dear to you misused in such a way. The abilities that these implants give our enemies have always been something that we have really been unable to combat since we don't really understand even the basic rules that govern them. That is, until you arrived. So, Twilight, can you help us find a way to fight these monsters?
The last comment snapped Twilight out of her moral outrage.
They need my help. What if Matt and Lana and Zhang, what if they just go out to fight every day? It has these things implanted in them. They need my help to fight it. They don't have any knowledge of magic or the matrices, so they really don't have a way to defend against it or utilize it for themselves, but is it right for me to help them make things that will hurt other living creatures?
The memory of an alien screaming death threats against her came to mind, as did Valen's admission of losing family she clearly cherished. With those memories so fresh, Twilight made her decision.
Okay, I'll do it. If it's to help you and your people survive, then you have a deal. So, what do you need? Oh, nothing too drastic at the moment, Twilight,
Valen said with a genuine smile.
Since these spell matrices are a new thing for us, I'd like to create something simple that can be used as proof of concept that these Illyrium circuits can be created to do, well, whatever we want.
Twilight nodded.
Then, if that's the case, I think I might have just the thing in mind.
3 p.m., May 2nd, 2015. Briefing room. And 33 fatalities reported across all branches of operation, as well as 12 wounded across the branches. Of the 12 wounded, 10 are expected to recover enough to be used in future operations. Paul Drzymski finished his summary before looking up at Bradford. Thank you, Lieutenant. You may be seated, Bradford said, and he gave each of the squad leaders a look while not sparing a glance to the 2 empty seats in the debriefing room. We lost a lot of good men and women today, but we gave the aliens a bloody nose that they'll not forget for a long time. We showed them that not only can we destroy the ships that they send to Earth, but we can steal them right out from under them. And we also saved a major urban center from being attacked, as well as maintaining the secrecy of this base. I know, it doesn't feel like it, but this was a victory. So inform your squads that they've earned a bit of rest, and I'll make arrangements for the mess hall to prepare something extra for them, Bradford added. Are there any questions? Anything? No? Dismissed. With that, Bradford turned to leave.
Sir? Permission to speak freely?
Bradford recognized Uther, the Strike 2 team leader, speak up. The commander turned to see all 4 commanders were standing, but none have moved from their seats. A united front? They must all want to have Uther's concerns addressed. Granted.
Thank you, sir. I lost half of my squad today taking over the engine room of the battleship. Privates Enderton and Johnson and Sergeant Beecham all died bravely, and Corporal Holliday will never walk again after the hit he took. Strike 3 died to a man defending the central section of the ship and accounted for dozens of kills before they were overwhelmed.
Uther swallowed and took a deep breath. They all served valiantly, and their sacrifices will not be forgotten, Lieutenant, and requests for reinforcements have been filed that will bring both Strike 1 and 2 up to full strength. Assistant squad leaders from Strike 7 and 10 have been chosen to lead the reconstituted Strike 3 and 4 as soon as the reinforcements arrive as well, Bradford said solemnly, but then he stopped when he saw Uther's knuckles go white around the tablet he held at his side.
But they wouldn't need to be replaced if they had been given the proper tools,
Uther stated, and Bradford could see the monumental effort that he was trying to make to not yell.
3 of my boys were dead when Strike 1 came to reinforce us in the engine room, and Harrison Jenkins just walked right up to the entrenched position and shot the aliens in the back without a single shot fired against them.
Begging your pardon, sir, but I think Uther's right, Drzymski added.
During the first part of the operation, Sergeant Harris and Private Jenkins didn't have a single shot fired at them despite being in close proximity to the enemy infantry on several occasions. The only reason I think that they were so completely ignored is the wallflower experiment that they were given prior to the mission, and it's because of that that we succeeded in our objectives. Exactly. So, with all due respect, we could have suffered significantly fewer casualties in the mission had this wallflower experiment been more widely dispersed among the troops. Look, I understand that the testing process for new equipment must be completed before mass production and dispersal may begin, but what if it's working well enough to be used in the field by 2 soldiers? So why isn't it being used by more?
Because it's not working well enough, Bradford replied sternly. The equipment used by Private Jenkins failed at a critical moment which resulted in her injury in the field, and Harris's equipment failed shortly after. The technology itself is extremely temperamental, and I only authorized its deployment with those 2 soldiers because they are extremely familiar with its use due to their volunteer work. Until it's completely developed, I cannot authorize mass deployment. Lying to protect my subordinates, Bradford thought distastefully, but he kept the emotion from appearing on his face. If they knew the source of equipment, I doubt that they'd be so keen to have it on them when they go out in the field. But then again, if they knew the source was still alive and in the base, they'd start to have doubts. So after this mission, our morale can't take this kind of hit. As soon as it's available, strike teams will get the new equipment. Understood, sir, Uther said as he and the others turned to leave, except for Drzymski. Any further questions, Lieutenant? Bradford asked, and an eyebrow rose in an increment when he noticed just how pale Paul had become. No, sir. Just thinking that I should, just go see the rest of my squad. the lieutenant answered, and beat a hasty retreat in the wake of his colleagues. Bradford didn't say a word as the last man left the room, nor did he voice the nagging suspicion that he wasn't the only person in the room who had been telling lies. 4:46 p.m. May 2nd, 2015. Stardust Labs. Twilight stretched before pushing herself away from the desk to head towards the sink.
I didn't think that Valen would have been so enthusiastic about creating a simple device to detect magic. I mean, I originally suggested it as a safe option rather than something flashy, but I didn't think that she'd want exactly, that.
Twilight thought as she somewhat clumsily filled the glass up by the sink. Her attempt to fill the glass wasn't helped when the door to her quarters came open unexpectedly. Twilight whipped around expecting to see Matt or Lana, but instead she saw Joel enter along with another person she had never really seen before that gave her a pause. This newcomer, he was a giant, standing nearly a head taller than Joel, as well as being far broader at the shoulder and waist as well. A significant amount of hair sprouted from his face as well, running down from the sides of his face and along his jawline, as well as framing what probably was his only welcoming feature, a warm smile. "Well, good afternoon, Twilight," Joel said, and he nodded to the man beside him. "This is Frank McKendrick. He's a doctor here at the base that would like to have a word with you." "Hello, Twilight. May I call you Twilight, or do you prefer something else since we have just been introduced?" Frank asked politely, and with an accent that Twilight had never heard before. The accent combined with polite speech and disarming smile caused her to adjust her opinion of the man.
He's like one of Fluttershy's bears, like big and scary unless you're a friend. Well, Twilight's fine, I suppose. So, do you prefer being called Frank?
Twilight asked as she walked towards her table and hopped up onto her seat. When Frank nodded, she continued.
So, what kind of doctor are you?
I help anyone who has problems that can't be fixed with a bandage, medicine, or time. Frank replied cryptically as he took a seat opposite of Twilight. You have to forgive my little, quirks. I know everyone on base, so I don't get to give my mysterious explanation that often. I help maintain the mental health of all the base personnel.
Mental health? Is that such a common problem with humans that you need doctors specifically for that?
Twilight asked, and no sooner had the last word left her mouth, she then realized what she was implying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I don't think you're all crazy. I swear.
Frank's response was a rumbling chuckle. My professors would always jokingly say, there's no such thing as sanity, only degrees of disorder. I think that's a verbose way of describing job security, but that's another one of my little quirks. It was actually because of my work that I was hoping to talk to you for a little bit today. Twilight's head tilted in response.
Wait, so why me?
Professional curiosity, officially. Unofficially, you're just about the only thing the research team talks about, plus Mr. Harris and Miss Jenkins, too.
Wait, what? They're talking about me? What are they saying?
Twilight wanted to scream, but she restrained herself.
Professional curiosity? I'm not sure how I fit in with that.
Human personalities develop mostly from the accumulation of their experiences over the course of their lives. On our world, we are the only sapient race, so my field is strictly restricted to other humans. Normally. When I heard about your existence, I must admit I wanted to talk to you as soon as I could just to see how similar we are mentally. Frank clasped his hands in front of him and leaned forward. Do you mind if we talk for a bit?
Sure, I suppose I don't mind. I did need a break from Valen's project, so this kinda works out,
Twilight explained.
So, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I was speaking with Joel here, and I was very interested in the schools that you mentioned. Before becoming Celestia's personal student, did you possibly attend a public school with others your age? Frank asked as he pulled out a small pad of paper and a pen to write on.
Well, technically, no. I did have a lot of self-study on magic after seeing Celestia raise the sun, and my parents enrolled me in Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns,
Twilight explained with a little smile of her own as she remembered that moment.
I wasn't really a part of the normal student body since I was taken as Celestia's personal student immediately after the entrance exams.
Well, that's rather impressive. You must have performed quite well during the exams to gain the notice of the headmistress of the school. Frank smiled widely as he scribbled a bit in the notepad.
I probably did a little too well, if that's possible. The test was to hatch a dragon egg using magic, so I managed to hatch the dragon and made it grow 50 feet tall, and levitated the judges and turned my parents into potted plants.
Twilight's explanation started out strong, but the longer she continued, the weaker her voice became. That's impressive, Frank said after a long moment of silence and scribbling in his notes. Before he could elaborate further, Twilight interrupted.
It wasn't. During the initial test, I couldn't really do anything, and I was so scared of the judges and letting my parents down that I couldn't even form a proper spell to attempt.
Twilight rattled off quickly.
I had given up, but I got startled during the test and started pulling too much power. Levitating the judges and turning my parents into plants was a result of the excess power escaping my control. If Princess Celestia hadn't been there to stop me, I could have died.
Ah, I see. Can you tell me about this Celestia? Twilight cleared her throat and explained.
She's the Princess of Equestria, who's responsible for raising the sun in the sky each day.
Uh-huh. I'm sure that's what it says in all the books back home, the doctor replied with a nod. Twilight gave him a suspicious look, so he continued. I'm certain you can tell me all about her history and what she's capable of doing and what her duties currently are. But if you've known her personally for years, yes? So what's she like as a person, or pony, if you prefer? The question actually gave Twilight pauses.
She's kind, but, she's also just a bit distant. She's lived for over 1,000 years, so I suspect that she's aware of the fact that I'll come and go in the blink of her eyes. Despite that, she still does care about me and about everyone, though the letter that she sent me, well, it kinda has me worried that she's blaming herself for me ending up here. She really shouldn't. It was my own mistake that got me here.
That mistake being the bet you made with, Discord, was it? The doctor looked to Joel, who nodded. Okay, so why was it your mistake?
Because Celestia told us that Fluttershy would be the best one to reform Discord, and Discord must have known it too, otherwise he wouldn't have really offered the bet. And now that I'm gone, the elements can't be used against him. Luna said that he was imprisoned, but nothing can really hold him long except for petrification, and that can't be done without the elements.
Twilight began to worry over her tail before looking to Frank. The smile was still in place. It's not your mistake to want to do everything you can for your teacher, especially since it's quite apparent that you greatly value her respect. And it's Discord's fault for taking advantage of your willingness to please, Frank explained gently. And I hate to impose, but I'm really a fan of all the art you've produced so far, but I don't think I've seen a picture of Discord yet. Do you have something drawn already for him, or might I ask you to draw him now?
Well, I don't really see why not.
Twilight stopped worrying over her tail and levitated a set of pencils and a blank sheet of paper over the desk. Immediately, the pencils went to work on the paper to outline Discord's serpentine form, the mismatched limbs and crazed expression. The entire process took less than 30 seconds before she presented it to the two humans into the room. Well, I think I can safely say that it's no product of, natural evolution, Joel said after a long moment.
Discord is apparently a being of magical origins. His exact creation is something of a myth, but the leading theory is that he's the manifestation of, well, negative emotions on the magical field. Discord hasn't really made a point of correcting or confirming the theory, and neither has Celestia, so I guess it'll just stay like that for now,
Twilight said with a shrug. Interesting. Do you mind if I ask what he's like? I would understand if it's uncomfortable of a subject.
He's crazy,
Twilight replied flatly. Both Frank and Joel chuckled at the immediate response, so Twilight elaborated.
He has power, loads of power, as well as the capacity to use it at any time. Anyone else who uses magic needs specific spells, aria and matrices to, well, really create the effects that they desire, but Discord, well, he doesn't really need them. He can just simply manifest his will upon the world by directly manipulating the field. It's his erratic nature that makes him such a threat, but it's also his weakness. Were he to participate in an orthodox duel, he could likely overpower everyone that he goes up against, but he doesn't because he prefers to toy with any pony, really.
Also, I may have heard that he was petrified for 1,000 years. If he was conscious during that time, but without the ability to move or use his senses, then I think that would have a corrosive effect on his sanity, Frank said after a long moment. It's just a theory. Most humans can't stand sensory deprivation for long without negative side effects.
Actually, I never thought of it that way.
Twilight trailed off as she considered the bit of information.
So, what if Discord hadn't always been like that? What if his 1,000 years of stone made him, well, what he is now? If that's the case, then what was he like before? Even if that were the case, I don't really think that I could forgive him very easily for what he did to my friends.
Ah, I do believe I heard about this as well. It sounds like you value your friends back home very highly.
I do.
Twilight nodded.
They're the best friends that I've ever had, and they're always able to help me when I come to them with a problem. I just wish that they'd, come to me now.
Unicorn finished up her thought with what she hoped was a sincere-sounding laugh. I'm sure that they will find you soon, and may I ask about your friends that you've made here? What can you tell me about them? The doctor ended his question with a flip of his notepad to start a fresh sheet of paper.
Well, I suppose things got off to a rough start.
The twitching corpse of the giant insect that she murdered, the harrowing escape from her cell, the testing of her abilities.
But once I got to know everyone, things started to get better.
Matt regretting the blood on his hands, Charles losing his family, Valen's shocking admission to Twilight. The memories of the past month came back to the unicorn as she continued to explain. Her most recent revelations prompted her next question.
Where are Lena and Matt? They left in a hurry, and no one seems to have an answer as to when they'll be back.
Twilight asked as calmly as she could.
The last time they left like this, Matt got hurt really badly, and no one told me anything until they came to visit. I need to ask Matt if it was really him that brought me here, and why he even hid it from me.
Twilight wasn't so far lost in her own thoughts that she missed the look on Frank and Joel exchanged before the doctor answered. They're still on their way back to us. If I see them, I'll send them to you as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
Frank nodded before changing the subjects. Apologies for going on a tangent like that. I did have a couple of other questions, though. So, you mentioned your former caretaker is now married to your brother? I imagine that must have been a very happy day for you.
Well, to be honest, I was pretty mad when I first heard.